Hi everyone, and once again, happy late new year. I don't know about you guys, but to me 2022 kinda went by so quickly, it feels like my last video was posted just a few weeks ago, don't you think?
See, now that's some bullshit.
In all seriousness though, I want to thank you all for still sticking with my channel to this day despite my shitty schedule, and since 2023 has arrived, I'll try my best to deliver more videos to you guys this year. Anyway, let's get right into today's topic. So after reading your comments for my last video about the next ideal prototype game, the two that I received the most were Prototype Remaster / Remake and Prototype Reboot. This is very interesting to me since long before this insane acquisition deal even took place, I would never even dream about Prototype having a remake, or let alone a reboot or some sort, because fucking Activision, right? But now that Microsoft will most likely be the new owner of this franchise, a chance for one of these versions to happen is very much possible in my opinion. Before we compare them and point out their pros and cons, I want to quickly go through the definition of these terms first, so none of the viewers here will get confused when I mention them. We'll start with remaster. When you remaster a game, you essentially bring the original to the newer platforms with enhanced graphic and better performance, among other improvements. Most of the cases, the story and characters will be left untouched and they will be the same like before. Remake is a bit different however. The game will be remade completely from scratch using different engine with modern graphics and new features, but still retain some or all aspect of the original. This is varied from different games of course. Since these two terms often get confused for some of their similarities, one simple way to tell them apart is to see if the remaster or remake use the source code of the old game or not. If they do, chance it's a remaster. If not, then it's a remake. A reboot is easier to distinguish from the other two. It's basically a complete restart of the franchise with a new story, gameplay and characters. Usually the only thing that will be preserved from the original is the name of the protagonist, which in this case, Alex Mercer. Okay, with that I hope you have a quick understanding of these terms. Now let's have a closer look to them and see which direction this franchise should take, assuming Microsoft would decide to revive it of course. First is Remaster. Without question it is the easiest version to make compared to the other two. Most of the work will be centralized in the graphical fidelity, so not only the game will look better, but it will also run better on newer hardware. And since Remaster tends to be faithful to the original, the gameplay and story will play out exactly the same. The one downside to this is that Prototype 1 is notorious for its relentless difficulty and weak story, so if we're gonna remaster the first game, is it really a good idea to keep everything as it is and hope the newer generation of gamers will enjoy it like we do? Next is Remake. Although harder to make, it can offer much more than a remaster. Not only the graphics of the game will be improved, but the gameplay and story will get fleshed out as well. In Prototype 1's case, more cutscenes can be added to fill in some confusing parts in the story, and they can also add moves that was missing in the first game back to Prototype 2. With that said, we can't just simply overlook the technical difficulty of remaking a game either. A lot of things need to be redone, like rewriting code, redoing cutscenes and animations, etc. So it may not be realistic to think that Microsoft would allow something like this to happen, and even if they did, could a new assigned studio be able to do it faithfully to the original? I guess we'll never know that answer until something comes up in the future. And last but not least, we have Reboot. Reboot can be a good choice if the original franchise had become way outdated to the current era, whether it was the gameplay, level designs, or the story, which is probably the main reason to why many Prototype fans want to go with this route in the first place. However, there are some glaring disadvantages of this method that need to be addressed. One of them is the workload. When you think about it, rebooting a franchise is pretty much making a brand new game with an old title slapped on it. That means the dev will have to redo the entire game with new location, missions, story and completely scrap everything from the original aside from the protagonist's name and maybe some basic ideas of gameplay like powers and abilities. Therefore, you can imagine the amount of work needs to be put in to make it happen, and not to mention Prototype is not that big of a franchise like it used to be anymore, so doing a reboot could hold a major risk for Microsoft and it might not be something they would consider in my opinion. Not only that, this risk doesn't just stop at the workload, but can also come from the stigma of the fans as well, like the people who want Prototype 3 for example. Regardless of what your thoughts about the main story of the game, I think we can all agree that there is so much more to be offered here, and further exploring it is something a lot of people would agree on. If Microsoft chooses to reboot the franchise, almost all the story materials will get thrown right in the trash, and unless the reboot turns out to be an amazing product, fans of the series will definitely not receive it well, and that whole Prototype 2 debacle might happen all over again, which will surely put this franchise to sleep forever. Alright, now that we finished listing the pros and cons, let's decide upon which version is the most feasible to make in this situation. If it were up to me, then yes, I would totally go with the remaster/remake route instead of rebooting the franchise. As I have mentioned, Reboot holds too much risk compared to the other two, especially when you talk about a franchise like Prototype. And when you think about it, one of the reasons why a reboot is needed is when the game has become too boring to look at and play, like having too outdated mechanics and level design to name a few. Prototype doesn't really have this issue, however. I personally think the gameplay can still hold on to this day, and with a new coat of paint plus a few tweaks and modifications, it will become even better than ever. And to be honest, the only reason for us to even consider a reboot in the first place is the story, since I know for a fact that majority of the fans who vote for this idea do so because they hate how Alex Mercer was changed and killed off in Prototype 2. So what more option do they have other than rebooting the whole franchise? A Prototype 3 without Alex Mercer is not gonna sit well with them, that's for sure. In conclusion, I think either a dedicated remaster or a faithful remake is a way to go here, and it is safer and require less time to make. But let's say if you still don't agree with me and still want to go with the reboot route, then keep watching, because in the next section of this video, I'll talk a bit about how we can fix the narrative of the story, then bring you guys my own remaster/remake version. To start this, I want to share with you guys a secret. This might come as a shock to you, but I genuinely think the story of Prototype 2 is not that bad at all. Even though I do agree about what they did to Alex is single-handedly the dumbest thing you could have done to a sequel story, it has also helped me create the most ingenious setup for the story of Prototype 3 ever. Oh yeah, speaking about that, if you follow me since the beginning of this channel, then you already know that I've been teasing this fucking Prototype 3 ideas video for like a million times now. And although I'm still not ready to share all the juicy details just yet, what I can share with you guys right now is some general ideas for the main story in order to turn it into something much more enjoyable going forward. So, how are we going to fix the Alex Mercer situation? The answer is actually more simple than you think. Firstly, in a world where the concept of changing and faking identity is commonly executed, is it really hard to believe that the Alex Mercer in the second game might be a fake one? For example, when you compare his face from Prototype 1 to 2, you can see some notable difference between them. Plus his voice has also been altered and doesn't sound the same as before. And I know what you think, okay? But Jeff, those are not evidence though. The devs changed his face to make him look more villainy, and the voice actor of Alex Mercer is different from the first game. Don't you know that? Yes, I do know that, and you guys are 100% correct on that one. But here's my point. You don't necessarily have to take these information as a given and instead convert them into something that could benefit the story. Wouldn't that be better? So here's my idea. In some way, this imposter managed to get a hold of Alex's DNA strain, but since it's not complete, the imposter can only transform into a very closely resembled version of him with a slightly different look and voice. With this new identity, he or she used it to hide behind all the atrocity that happened in Prototype 2 and blame everything on Alex. Meanwhile, he is still somewhere out there, trying to find his real purpose in life. This will effectively fix the whole Alex turned evil arc, because technically he was never there in the first place, thus open up a door for his comeback in Prototype 3. If you want to know who this imposter is, I'll give you a hint. It's actually someone who has appeared in the story before, and if you're a very observant person, you could easily narrow down the candidates, because there are only like 3 living things in this universe who could have access to Alex's DNA, so here you go. But while in the topic of observation, you might have noticed that I seem to overlook a crucial information regarding to this idea, which is the event related to Alex in the comic. When you take this into consideration, my idea doesn't make much sense anymore, as it's clearly implied that Alex was the one who wanted to change the world for the better, and not some imposter that took his place or anything. The easiest way to fix this issue is to simply delete the comic from existence, but obviously we're not gonna do that because that's just pure laziness, okay? Here's what we're gonna do instead. Since the villain Alex never mentioned anything about his experience in the comic, we can create a narrative to make these two completely separate from one another. We can just say that right after Alex killed Autumn and was ready to take over the world, something suddenly occurred to him in his head, maybe a vision or a piece of memory or some sort. Whatever this information or memory may be, It made him change his mind and go back to his soul-searching journey like he did before. Now the story can continue as normal without ruining his character and gives him a chance to return in the future sequel. So there you have it. That is my fix for the Prototype 2 story. Some of you may still have a lot of questions about things like the imposter and the connection of this person to the overall storyline. Those details will unfortunately have to wait for now. But don't worry, because when it's the right time for me to release my Prototype 3 video, everything I've said that might confuse you will be explained, and it will definitely be worth your while, that I can assure you. Or it could also turn into one of the shittiest and most clusterfuck fanfiction stories you ever consume in your life. Hopefully things won't turn out that way, and I actually manage to deliver something great to you guys instead. Anyway, enough of that, let's move on to the final section of this video. Alright, since today's topic is all about Remake and Remaster, I think this is a great time to share my own version of it. Imagine it like a prequel to my Prototype 3 video or something like that. Although I wouldn't go super in depth into every little detail in this one, since that would make the video way too long. I would go through most of the important stuff so you guys can have a clear understanding of what my version would be like. To start with, we need to talk about game version. Like I've said in the previous section, either a dedicated remaster or a faithful remake would work here. If you need some examples, then a dedicated remaster is something like Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. Not only it got remastered with better graphics, but they also added more gameplay contents into the game, like new civilizations, better campaigns, and lots of quality of life features. On the other hand, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy is what a faithful remake would be like. The game got remade from the ground up, but still kept most of the things from the original intact, like the gameplay, level design, along with some small changes. Both of these versions are great and can achieve the same goals, so either way is fine I think. Now onto the interesting stuff. First is gameplay. For the most part the gameplay of Prototype 1 is very good, but we certainly can tweak a few things to make it better. As you know, the difficulty in Prototype 1 can be a bit unforgiving, especially during boss fights. They can instantly drain your health bar with just one or two attacks, plus it's not easy to quickly regain your health back, since you'll get interrupted by the enemies while trying to consume something. You could combat this by carrying your victim to a safe place to consume, but that would disrupt the game flow and is not really fun to do. To change this, we can simply add a new and faster consume technique to the game called Air Consume. This is a move that was introduced in Prototype 2. It mitigates this whole disruption problem and make it easier to gain back your health. For balancing purpose though, Air Consume only grants you about 25% of health, which basically requires you to do it 4 times to gain the same amount in comparison to normal consume. And while in the topic, another thing that needs to be balanced is offensive powers. The blade is way too powerful in Prototype 1. It's just as fast as the claws and can deal the same damage as the hammer fist. This makes the other two obsolete since they are weaker and slower than the blade. To balance things out, blade will not be useful against vehicles like tank. That means way less damage output and should only be used against the infected. Hammer fist recovery animation will be shortened, making it less of a pain to use, and we can add the claw pounce ability in Prototype 2 to this one, making claws have a longer reach than blade. And lastly, I want to make some changes to Stealth Consume. To put it bluntly, Stealth Consume fucking sucks in Prototype 1. You have to slowly position yourself behind the target and wait patiently until the F key grows red, then you can finally able to do it. To fix this crap, you simply press F whenever and in whichever direction you want, even at the front. But the animation can fail if someone is watching that target. And just like the second game, you will know exactly who is watching with an icon above their head. Those are the 3 major things I'd like to see changing. There are still a few small changes I'd like to make, but we'll save it for the later part. Right now let's talk about Prototype 2's gameplay. And yes, we're gonna tackle the second game in this video too, so be ready for that. The situation of the gameplay in Prototype 2 is a complete opposite to Prototype 1. Offensive powers are well balanced and make you want to use them all, but the difficulty is way too easy with barely any challenge, except maybe the final boss fight. So how are we gonna make the game more challenging? First, get rid of this, or I would say the invulnerability of it. Shield is way too overpowered in Prototype 2. It can nullify most attacks and never break, except in some cases like the final boss, which explains why it had any challenge in the first place. Shield will now function kinda like the one from Prototype 1. It can take a few hits before breaking, and requires some time to regenerate and be used again. One key difference is the amount of hit it can take solely depends on how well you can time your block. If you just hold your shield up without any thoughts of counterplay, it will break in just a couple of hits. But if you manage to perform a time block, not only you can deflect their attack, but the shield will take much longer to break, rewarding you for playing smartly. Another reason for why the game was so easy is because of detection nerf. In Prototype 1, the danger of getting detected is lurking everywhere. You can't even do some practicing with your power on top of a building without being seen, because the helicopters are constantly on patrol around the whole city. And if you decide to cause some carnage and get the strike team on your ass, good luck trying to shake them off, unless you destroy all of them or do some trickery to quickly lose their sight on you. This is not the case in Prototype 2. In this game you can stand on the building with your weapon drawn and nobody would give a shit. Not even in the red zone, since there are hardly any helicopter patrol at all. If you so choose, you can jump in and trash the military base for a while, then simply run away, and the detection meter would go back to normal in an instant. Also, let's not forget that the UAV and Super Soldier got their viral detection ability removed in this game too, thus making disguise and infiltration feel like a breeze. The fix here is quite obvious, just revert everything back to the way it was. Helicopters can patrol the entire zone, and UAV and Super Soldier will detect you like normal. These changes will ensure the game will be much more fun and challenging as it should. One last aspect of the gameplay that needs to be brought back to its former glory is Traversal. Unlike many others, I personally don't think the removal of parkour animation in Prototype 2 was that bad. I mean, hell, certainly didn't feel as flashy as Alex when running, but it doesn't really affect me that much. What does affect me though is how they remove some of the coolest traversal moves in Prototype 1, like the ability to grind down or crawl up a building, some backflip stuff, and the most important thing of all, the charge jump. I don't really understand why they would decide to remove it. To me, the beauty of the charge jump is it gives you a little bit of weight behind your jump, thus giving you that satisfaction when you release the jump button. So in my opinion, these moves need to be brought back. Maybe the backflip can be skipped, but the other three have to return, especially the charge jump. We're not gonna do the whole spacebar to jump higher shit anymore, right? That shit is dumb and should have never replaced the charge jump in the first place. Okay, those are the gameplay changes in Prototype 2. We'll now get to the most interesting part of this section, the story. As usual, we're gonna start with Prototype 1. Although a bit dark and gritty, the overall story of Prototype 1 is good and provides enough entertainment for me till the very end. The only issue I have is it kind of forced me to solve some of the plots by myself due to the lack of explanation in said plot. A prime example for this is the Supreme Hunter arc. Because of the poorly explained nature of this arc, it still creates a lot of questions and debates in the community to this day. Who really is the Supreme Hunter? Are Captain Cross and this creature the same person, or is it actually Pariah? These are the ones that have been brought up by the fans since the creation of this game. To deal with this issue, we can simply add in the one thing that was lacking in the story: explanation.
No shit.
No, what we're seriously gonna do is to create brand new cutscenes and integrate them to the existing story to further explain these plots. As there are quite a number of places we can improve, I will concentrate solely on the Supreme Hunter arc for now. So during the final confrontation of Alex, Mercer and Captain Cross, they will have a quick conversation to help us uncover the mystery of Supreme Hunter. It would go something like this.
What the hell did you do? Where did you get this strength?
After getting ripped from you, I thought I was dead. But Mother, she revived me and made me what I am now. Cross was just another pawn for me to get you on this deck, and when I'm done with you, I will become unstoppable. During the conversation, there will also be a small flashback cutscenes that shows how the Supreme Hunter defeated and consumed Captain Cross to further explain it. This is how I imagine the fight would be like, by the way. Captain Cross will perform a few dodge rolls to get out of harm's way, then attempt to hit Supreme Hunter with his baton, but barely has any effect on it. The Supreme Hunter will eventually manage to catch Cross and slam him to the ground, then proceeds to consume him. This is just one way to make this arc better, and since I'm not necessarily a good writer, feel free to give your own take in the comment section if you find the above dialogue a bit cheesy. Another type of cutscene I want to improve upon is the end boss fight cutscene. I find most of them rather underwhelming as they don't give you the satisfaction after you finally defeated one of these bosses. I'll bring back the Supreme Hunter as an example here. After beating it on a ship, instead of simply cutting its head off, we can have a 30-second QTE cutscene of Alex completely decimated the Supreme Hunter, just like the final boss fight from Prototype 2. Not only they will look amazing, but they will also make these fights much more memorable. But you know, we don't have to put these QTE cutscenes in every single boss fights in the game. Just the biggest and most important ones will be good enough. There's still one more thing I need to add to the story, but before I get to it, I want to remind you guys something. If any of you have watched my content for a long time, you might notice that I like to mention the game Marvel Spider-Man a lot. Aside from giving you a great example of what a modern prototype game could look like, the name Marvel has also brought me an idea for this story. If you're a fan of the MCU, then you already know that Marvel is really good at hyping people up for the next movie. And the way they did it is, you guess it, having post-credit scenes at the end of the movie. So we're gonna do the same thing with Prototype 1 and 2, giving them post-credit cutscenes at the end of the game, and both will have 2. We'll start with Prototype 1. In the first cutscenes, inside an office of an Air Force base, a Black Watch soldier received a phone call from a higher up, informing him that General Randall has died, so they need to transfer the test subject to another secret base ASAP. This test subject is none other than Pariah, of course. Since Randall has been consumed by Alex, he would instantly receive the information to where Pariah was, and letting them see each other would be extraordinarily bad, as Dr. McMullen has said, so moving him to a different location would be a sensible option here. The cutscenes also serve as a way to hype this character up, since we barely know anything about him. Putting Pariah here would bring in a lot of attention from the players and make them wonder what will happen next, stuff like that. The next cutscenes is a bit more down to earth. After saving New York, Alex goes back to the hospital to check on his sister. There he is greeted by Dr. Raglan, and he tells Alex that Dana wasn't harmed in any way and she just suffered from shock and dehydration. Feeling relief, Alex sits next to Dana and gently places his hand on top of hers, showing sign of calm and reassurance, but right in that moment, a vision or some sort appears in his mind, displaying a series of moments where Dana was terrified of something or someone. Alex stands up, then asks Dr. Raglan to keep taking care of her until she's fully awake, since he can't stay here anymore. But before he leaves, Alex tells Raglan to give these words to her whenever she woke up, that he's truly sorry for everything that has happened to her, and he walks away after. Pretty dramatic, eh? Let me explain. The purpose of this cutscene is to serve as a bridge to the event in the comic. It gives you more reasons to Alex's word travel decision. Dana Mercer was the only person he truly cares about throughout the story. Therefore, it would make sense that he would go back and check on her and not just leave her there for no reason. And if you didn't quite get the whole vision thing, it was there to imply Alex's fear for Dana. He's afraid that if he stays too close to her, he might hurt her again, whether it is emotionally or physically. Hence, getting out of her life is the only way for him to never put her in danger again. There's a few more details I wasn't able to share about how and why this vision appeared in Alex's head, because it's directly related to my Prototype 3 story, so let's ignore them for now. Alright, moving on to the Prototype 2's post-credit cutscenes. Oh wait, I forgot to talk about the overall improvements for the Prototype 2 story. I got a bit too excited with the post-credit stuff. You know, actually I don't think this game really needs anything major for the story, to be honest. Most of the cutscenes are well made, and the majority of the story are easy to follow and quite enjoyable, except for the ending obviously. The only thing I would like to add in is a few extended cutscenes to show more width of the evil Mercer. I know it sounds confused as fuck, so I'll give you an example. During the end of the scene where Mercer and Hela was confronting each other, you could see the evil Mercer ran and jumped off the rooftop. Here's when the extended part comes in. After landing on the ground, we'll see Mercer looking back at the building while having a big smirk on his face, then proceeding to walk off screen. This will give the players the impression that Mercer was expecting Hela to resist his consume and actually having plans for this situation beforehand. Combining this concept with that imposter idea of mine, and we could have a bunch of questions and theories for it. What is he thinking? What sort of plans does he have? Who is this person really? Just so many things to uncover. Okay, going back to the post-credit stuff. We start off with a continuation of the Pariah arc that we left off last time. In the first cutscenes, we can see a Black Watch soldier who's sleeping on his chair. It was his duty to guard the test subject's cell during this hour, but since there hasn't been anything serious happen in a long time, he got bored and fell asleep. Then, a strange noise that comes from the cell suddenly wakes him up and gets his attention. But before he can fully understand what is going on, an insanely loud sound erupts, which shocks him and knocks him off his chair. He rushes to the cell and opens up the door, only to see an empty room with a large hole in the wall. Terrified by what he's looking, he quickly runs back and alerts the entire base. The screen slowly fades to black with sirens sounding, Black Watch soldier in shambles. This event took place right after the end of the final boss fight, where James Heller unleashed those massive tendrils and consumed most of the infected in the red zone. From all the information we've had from Pariah, I perceive him as a quiet type. During all those years that he was in captive, he didn't seem to cause any serious trouble other than the 5 deaths that he was responsible for. And because of the fact that he showed no sign of virus symptoms after all the testing conducted by Blackwatch, plus this footage of him with what appears to be a dead dog, I believe these deaths are either by accident or are not related to human but to animal instead. So what made Pariah suddenly able to break out Blackwatch captive, even though he didn't seem to have these powers before? Is it related to what James Heller did at the end of his fight? That will remain as a mystery for now. In the second cutscenes, and I think some of you will like this one, we're gonna dive back to that final fight, in particularly the part where Heller was ripping Mercer's limbs off. We'll remove the QTEs and change some camera angles to make it more cinematic. Then, in the final moment where Mercer was about to be consumed, we get to see the front of his face where he said,
Welcome to the top of the food chain.
As he's saying this, he's also having an evil smile on his face, like a last-ditch effort to piss off Heller, or maybe he was expecting this moment all along. The camera then slowly chances out the shot where Heller starts to claw Mercer to piss, and right at the end of it, we can see one of his severed arm that Heller ripped off is having a slight movement in one of its fingers just before the screen goes to black. And that's how we hype people up for Prototype 3, giving them the sign for the comeback of Alex Mercer using the arm theory. Though if you already watched this video of mine, you're probably thinking, "But Jeff, I thought you didn't agree with the arm theory. Why did you use it here? Have you changed your mind?" No, not really. The reason why I use the arm theory for this one is because it's the most famous theory that every Prototype fans know of. And I'm sure everyone is gonna freak the fuck out after they saw that last shot, since most of us want to see Alex back in the third game, right? But obviously we're not gonna bring him back that way, as we only use the cutscenes to redirect the audience into something else. Think of it as one of the subverting expectations tactics that have been used by these shitty writers, but instead of making a garbage plot like those idiots, we're actually gonna make a decent one this time. Before I go, there's still some miscellaneous stuff I want to discuss, but since I'm too lazy to talk about every single one of them, I'm gonna make a quick highlight to help illustrate my point, so here it is. And that concludes everything I want to cover in this video. What do you guys think about my version overall? Was it good enough already? Or is there something else you want to add upon? Or maybe you still believe rebooting the franchise is a better option. In any case, please comment your thoughts down below and I'll be sure to read all of them as usual. And once again, I want to apologize for my constant absence on YouTube. I've addressed this before, but I was having a lot of real life issues and couldn't put my mind into making videos. A good news though, by the end of March, I think I'll be able to sort out most of my shit and finally have more free time for this channel. There are actually a lot of stuff I've been planning to do for a long time, including a bunch of non-prototype stuff too, as I always want to make videos about some of my other favorite franchises as well. But fear not, since you guys are the reason why my channel is where it's at right now, I will never, ever stop making prototype videos. Not until Prototype 3 comes out at the very least. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop my rambling here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.